a few months ago, just to kind of set the scene, I recently did a talk all about trends and kind of mainly focused on the platform that shall not be named. But it was all around, how trends have evolved and how people are interacting with them. But YouTube itself isn't really built around trends in that same way. Obviously, we live in a world where trends encapsulates everything. Like if you look at the 70s, there were certain fashion trends versus the 60s and what we have now. But I'm talking more about that kind of viral churn of like short reactive trends that we see that people kind of jump on and try and replicate. Whereas I think YouTube, it's not really about that. It's much more about the content itself, finding something that you personally are interested in. Sam, I think you said that was sort of Nordic history. And finding something that interests you as a viewer and finding creators and channels that personally speak to you. So we often at Go will tell brands that they need to act like creators. But with YouTube, I sort of see it as acting somewhere, and Jordan kind of stole my line here, as acting somewhere between a TV producer or a TV channel and a creator. And doing the best of both to kind of engage people in the most you can and keep them watching. And in both cases, you do need to be really tapped into consumer moods, behaviors, and trends. I think as marketers, we can sometimes get very bogged down in kind of the data and the day-to-day and the strategy, and we forget that ultimately we are trying to engage human beings. And I think also one of the negatives of sort of, again, TikTok, the platform that we shan't be named in a way, is that over the last 5 years, it does feel in marketing, we've sort of fallen into this trap of just constantly trying to replicate these trends and keep up with these ever changing things that are happening every week. And sometimes we're kind of getting so bogged down in that maybe we're not necessarily looking above the ground and kind of thinking of our own original content. So yeah, I think, YouTube's very exciting because it's not so reliant on that. You have people watching 7-part long form documentaries. You have people watching creators like Miss Rachel, who's a kids entertainment and children's learning channel that has over 13 million subscribers. People like me watching intense 20-minute behind the scenes at like a restaurant, followed by a 60-second short. We're a lot more led by that. So it's really about catering to specific groups, but finding how to do that in a unique way. So I just wanted to kind of touch on as well. I know we've spoken a lot about why YouTube now, and aside from the obvious need for diversification of platforms and connected TVs, I think there are a few other things. The end of reactivity. Are people getting tired of the constant trend cycle? The speed of creation. Will AI break down the barrier to entry? And broadcasters are struggling to be brave. So can brands fill this gap? So from a kind of social perspective, I have really just noticed in the last few months that I think there's starting to become a bit of a backlash to this trend churn cycle. It's clean girl, then it's brat summer, now it's demure fall, now apparently it's messy girl summer, winter or something, or disheveled British woman winter or something, which I just feel like that's me daily. But, I think there's a lot of thought pieces, and you can't set too much store by thought pieces, but there does seem to be a lot around this kind of danger of falling into these like hyper aesthetics and hyper micro trends. And something I found interesting, that there's ironically a trend on TikTok at the moment of people starting to be like, this is how I avoid the trends, or this is how I'm not engaging with the trends. And I'm purposely not going to do the next viral dance, the next trending sound. And so people are like actively trying to almost kind of stay away from it. And I think every 5 years or so, like you look back at like the 90s, the noughties, the middle part of the decade is always like a bit of a signifier of like a change and a shift. And I think maybe we might see that of this next 5 years, people actually start to have a bit of a backlash. Then from a technological perspective, obviously, the introduction of AI, machine learning, the way that people are able to just create content quicker than ever before. We are probably the first generation the next generation, low budget student films will have as high quality CGI as kind of movies. And a creator can create a better TV ad than an agency team can using AI. That will probably happen in the next 5 years. So because of that, competition on this platform is going to become really big over the next 5 years, because there will just be so many more people that are able to push out content quicker, faster, and better. And so as brands, if you want to kind of be ahead of the curve in the same way that when TikTok exploded in kind of 2020, the brands that really jumped on it fast did very well. And the ones that kind of were slow have sort of missed the boat. And then finally, a sort of economic cultural shift are about kind of the traditional TV channels. So hopefully everyone in the audience has seen at least one of these or recognizes it. So Rivals, one of my favorite TV shows of last year. So that was a big hit on Disney Plus. In October, it became the 10th most streamed show in the US for the week of its release. And it was quite a risky TV show, if you think about it, like set on, Jilly Cooper's and old authors book, all very kind of lots of sex, all about TV. And it was ironically about TV broadcasting channels wanting to commission new programs and beating each other. And the irony is that this wasn't on ITV or on BBC. It was Disney Plus who ended up streaming it. ITV's biggest show of last year was Mr. Bates versus the Post Office, which was a 4-part series all about the post office drama. So this was the most streamed drama for them of the year. The catch is that it made a loss of around £1 million. So basically, despite it being well reviewed by critics, by audiences, it just didn't have enough global appeal for it to kind of go to America. Like, it's quite a British thing, the post office. So you're going to struggle to sell that abroad. And at only 4 episodes, it's not really enough to gather momentum. And I basically was reading this article in the Times, and it was kind of saying that, having spoken to a lot of broadcasters and commissioners, they are really struggling to take a risk and to be able to take a risk, because when they do take risks, if they don't go well, then, they've lost a lot of money, times are tough. And so what we are seeing now is either these kind of global appeal TV shows or reality TV and game shows that don't cost a lot to make and can be sort of pumped out and repeatable formats. That's probably why, when you turn on the TV, you're often faced with like Gogglebox, Deal or No Deal, like all these kind of reality shows, The Circle. And in no way is this, to have a go at TV, because it's still a great, it's a great place. I've watched plenty of TV myself, but I think the space for sort of taking a punt is getting smaller every year. And so this is leaving space for creators to take over these spaces, because as more and more people are looking for niche content, exciting content, risky content, they're not going to be finding that on TV. They're going to go to YouTube. They're going to go to the streaming platforms, and they're going to go and seek this out for themselves. So, how many young people have watched a late night chat show, and how many have watched Hot Ones? Like, they probably are going to go find these now elsewhere, because it's just not on these traditional channels anymore. So we, I believe, need to, for YouTube, think like a TV producer and act like a creator. So if you're first thinking of your brand like a TV producer, or a brave TV producer, one that can take those risks, how do you go about doing this? So I had a look at a couple of brand channels that I personally love. So this may be a little bit biased towards my personal interest, but a brand that I'm a massive fan of, just generally, of their marketing, is Elf Cosmetics. I'm sure lots of people know about them. And what I find with their kind of content with creators, but also on their own channels, and they do a lot of co-creation. So they'll have creators on their channel, they work with creators, is they have stuff for like their brand fans. So people like me who really love Elf and actually are interested in Elf. So they've got like things about their product launches, behind the scenes of a TV ad, the TV ads themselves, because some people want to watch the TV ads if they're a big fan of Elf itself. And, outtakes from the ads, content around their causes, anything for actual fans of Elf. Then you've got a lot of stuff for the enthusiasts. So that's people that may not necessarily love Elf, but they love beauty, and they're interested in beauty and skincare. And I find that's where they're using a lot of shorts as well, is to really tap into that vertical specific content. That's where a lot more of the like get ready with me's, the, episodic series with tutorials. They've got one all around kind of like your skin sins, so skipping the SPF, and a lot of creator-led content as well. And that's to kind of get in the minds of those people that really enjoy beauty. And then finally, they've got stuff for the culture. So wider culture. What if the wider consumer who doesn't necessarily love beauty, they buy makeup, but they don't consume beauty content? Many of my friends are those types of buyers. They don't go to YouTube really to watch beauty content, but they definitely buy and wear makeup regularly. So how do you reach them? And with that, they've kind of looked at different ways that they can create content that will hit those people. So one example is the Show Yourself documentary on the bottom bottom right. And that had kind of a docuseries with different inspirational people that didn't see themselves as like fitting into a box. So this, for example, is Chella Man, a model, an actor who's also Chinese and Jewish and deaf. So kind of talking about all of those different sort of labels and how he doesn't kind of identify with those labels. But then they also talk about beauty and makeup and how they kind of use that to express themselves. Any Bravo fans in the audience, this is from Vanderpump Rules, which is, you know, a reality show set in LA, all about kind of people who work in a bar. And they are two of the main characters from that show who have beef, basically, and have had a lot of arguments over the years on the show. And they got them to kind of discuss the issues that they were having on the show while doing each other's makeup. And they did this across a few different people. So they had two creators who've had some kind of online beef as well. And the series was called Makeup Over Makeup. It was performed incredibly well. It had so many organic views, was used on shorts as well. This is a short version of it.
Bake me gorgeous.
Okay. If you haven't had a rage text from Katie Maloney, have you really just lived life? It's like a rite of passage at this point.
When me and Saucy like made up, I didn't have an opportunity to prove to you that there was enough room in my life for the both of you.
And it kind of has all of what you need for a great piece of content, in that it's a popular show amongst Gen Z and millennial audiences, which is their target. So it ties to the products in a really clever way. It's got gossip, it's got conflict, it's an extension of the franchise. It's kind of everything you want. And it's everything that specifically as well, non-beauty lovers will also enjoy and will still come and watch that, even if they themselves have never heard of e.l.f. They'll see those kind of recognizable people. And then another brand is Vogue, which I don't know if Vogue, I guess it does really count as a brand. It's also, you know, a massive media conglomerate. But again, for the fans, they know that there are people who are going to be coming to Vogue who are really intense fashion brands. And so they want the deep dives into designers and into couture shows. And they want the history of the designers and interviews that go into specific detail and showcase you making these kind of couture costumes. People who really have that passion for Vogue as well, like Vogue as a brand. Then you've got the sort of more enthusiasts again. So beauty, fashion tips with celebrities. What are celebrities wearing? How do you dress for a season? What are the trends? Kind of your like casual enthusiast, I guess. And then finally, for the culture, again, Blake Lively making a key lime pie has nothing to do with fashion. It has nothing to do with Vogue, but it's that cross section of what people are going to enjoy. And they've had, you know, YouTube shorts like, what does Rihanna do on a lazy day? And then they're kind of, she's giving a 60-second answer. Or why does Billie Eilish keep changing her hair? So it's like they understand that those kind of niche topics aren't necessarily going to work as much in that short form discoverable content. So with that, yeah, when you're kind of thinking about how to act like a brave TV producer, I think it's good to split it into these three buckets. For the fans, what would your true brand fans love to watch? For the enthusiasts, what would your industry's enthusiasts love to watch? And for the culture, what would the wider pop culture fans and communities love to watch? And sort of thinking of it as like a bit of a kind of reach circle. There's no point doing loads of shorts, as I said, or paid ads that are already hitting that like core that you've already got, that already are going to come and see your content. It's kind of like, how can you get these wider moments and use shorts as a way to bring those people in and bring them into the content? And you can also think of creators as a gateway in a way, in that a lot of people in those second tier don't want to be intimidated, because if you're not someone who knows a lot about makeup, you can feel a bit intimidated by all this kind of niche knowledge and tips. So how do you kind of bring them in with relevant creators and get them content that they're going to resonate with in a way that doesn't make it feel too kind of exclusive and like we're the sort of brand fans? So I think none of these have to be completely separate, but it's about sort of thinking those three buckets. Then into how you act like a creator. So if you're thinking more about the type of content that you want to commission or create, and you act like a creator, I know we've spoken about her a few times today, but I think Amelia de Moldenberg, she really listens to the wider culture and community, and she gets more out of her guests than just that interview. So a bit of an example.
This is my sister.
How old's your sister again?
Yeah, below me.
She got a boyfriend?
Why? You interested? You can't be. Have you met my sister?
Never met her.
No, she's not interested in you, so.
Really?
Yeah.
What's her type?
Not you.
Really? Really?
She would not go on a date with you.
How do you know?
Because I know.
And you've asked
We live
her?
together. And
No, but bro.
We're on a date, so can you stop trying to go on a date with my sister?
Oh, this is Zoe. This is my sister. Yeah, this is my sister. There you go. Yeah, so now you've met.
So sort of just, I also just think a funny moment that last night I was just showing my boyfriend this and I called him CeeLo Green instead of Central C. So that's my knowledge of rappers. He very quickly corrected me. But I think that kind of shows of like finding a piece of content from like a past interview and then finding new ways to repurpose it. So I know also that these are showing on TikTok, but it's because YouTube Shorts will not let me download videos, Chris. But yeah, what she basically does is she has these long form videos that are the hero, but she kind of finds new ways to use the cut downs in different ways. They're not just short, they're not just cut downs of the interview for shorts, although she does do that as well. She kind of finds like fun new things to do with the interviews and the guests that will get other fans in who might not want to kind of watch that whole 6-minute video. So this is kind of like a standard slide or something we would show at Go in terms of acting like a creator, is that what you really need to think about is what you stand for as a brand, what do you care about, what does your audience stand for and care about, and then what's kind of the nexus between that. So like, what are the trends your audiences are participating in? Which creators would you follow and engage with? Who are the creators that can help tell that story? And then what are your audiences telling you they want more of? And I think this is all super important, but I do think we need to look a bit more broadly, and it's not enough to move at the speed of social when the culture of social media is changing. And this when I'm going to go a little bit wider into kind of consumer behavior trends that I've been noticing over the last few months. So if you're looking, instead of just moving at the speed of social, but move at the speed of culture, I think you also need to be looking at moods and culture and social media, how your audience is feeling, what do they care about, which cultural movements and moments and trends and shifts are they participating in, and how are they using social media to do it. So having a little look at the last few years of what we've kind of noticed, I would say 2020 and kind of the few years after that, the main things we started to see were the rise of the micro trends and the aesthetics, like I mentioned before. Trends become like hyper collaborative. But now what we're starting to see in 2024 were things like returning of macro trends and macro experiences, things like the Eras tour, which felt like everyone was kind of involved in it, or Brat Summer. But also that kind of trends becoming hyper collaborative. What we started to see in 2024 is, again, people starting to experience a bit of trend fatigue. In early 2020s, brands communicate through social. Now, 2024, brands participate on social. In 2020, we had one of the biggest global shared crises of, any distant memory. Now it feels like we just have constant polycrisis. There's always terrible things going on all the time, and it's all kind of individual, and everyone has certain things that they engage with more. Then in 2020, the biggest kind of aesthetic trend was more like clean girl, beige influence. I think that tied to the pandemic and the fact that people were literally trapped indoors. Whereas in 2024, it started to be Brat Summer, messy girl, like embracing hedonism again. And then finally in 2020 as well, linked to the pandemic, everything was kind of taken out of our power for a year. And over the last few years, we've been really trying to like reclaim that power. And so in 2025, what can we sort of expect in terms of the vibe shift? So a few things I've sort of noted is, one, we don't have the answers. I think in the 2010s, we felt like power was being reclaimed by people. Social media was the way that we were going to do it. We were going to change everything and change the world. Whereas now we sort of realize that not only do we not necessarily have that power, but even if we did, we actually don't have a clue either. And I think, what we're seeing is people having that sense of anxiety and almost wanting to hand over power again to the people that they feel have that. Stress empowerment. Are Gen Z getting tired of being an activist generation? I saw a stat that 63% feel too much pressure to change the world. I think my dad always has this phrase that everyone's an activist till they're 25. Gen Z are getting older, they're getting more cynical, they're having to pay mortgages, they're having to pay taxes. That instantly makes people less likely to be kind of an activist. And so another example is that despite us always calling Gen Z the activist generation, 2024 was Shein's biggest financial year ever. So sometimes there isn't the combination of what we say and what we do doesn't necessarily match up. But I think given that Gen Z are sort of that like trend-setting generation because they're the youngest, but Gen Alpha haven't quite reached that age yet where they're going to start pushing real cultural shifts. It's still going to be about Gen Z, but they are now reaching their late 20s. They're going to be in their early 30s soon. That's a very different time and a very different attitude. And coupled with that, Gen Z are becoming more cynical. So they're no longer as fresh, unjaded. There's probably some Gen Z people in the room here that are thinking they're probably less, they're less kind of jaded, or they're more jaded than they were when they were at uni. We've also seen things in 2024 come and go. 2010s was all about body positivity. As Ozempic comes along, we've gone back like 7 steps. They've seen their favorite celebrities have downfalls. One thing I read, and good timing, was that apparently Gen Z have a newfound love of Bridget Jones. And before, she was kind of very much vilified as like the antithesis of everything that a woman should be. Like, she cares about her weight and men and relationships, and all she cares about is a boyfriend. And I think, Gen Z, maybe they're discovering that life's actually pretty hard, and actually she maybe had a point, and so we should give her a bit of a break. But I think just generally we're starting to see that, Gen Z becoming a bit more cynical. 2020 was like one of the biggest, political shift years, massive election year, a very highly anti-incumbent feeling globally. And I think what will often happen after changes of governments is people have a sense of like, sometimes, things might change or things might get better. And like, sometimes there's hope or there's disappointment depending on the results. But I think also you tend to then sort of realize after some time passes that your life doesn't necessarily change much day to day. And that kind of leaves people with a bit of a sense of anticlimax. AI intrigue and human creativity, people are nervous about it. I think people are worried about what the effects are going to be, but they're also excited about the possibilities, and they kind of feel it's inevitable. And then finally, what I think all of these things are kind of culminating in this heightened, like, we've had these anxious years, but now people have had brat summer, they want to kind of go out again, but also there's a feeling of like, just kind of exhaustion maybe, that people are more seeking joy and shared fun experiences, but also stability, flawed heroes, and comfort without so much of a message. So as an example, what this means for advertisers, I think there's kind of 2 points to take away from this. One, if you feel like your brand is still catching up with some of those shifts from the past 5 years, you're probably about to be left behind again, because things are about to change all over again. So you've got to always be checking in with like the cultural kind of perspective. Consumers are less interested in collective virtue from brands. I think that's what we're seeing across the board. They're more interested in kind of individual enjoyment and comfort, and how you in a brand can enable that. So as an example, I saw an ad on YouTube Shorts actually for a sleep app. And this is just kind of a very simple example, but it was an ad that started with a girl kind of showing her boyfriend like passed out asleep on the sofa when they were meant to go for a walk. And it said like, this is what happens when you use the sleep app or whatever. And then it kind of went into details about the sleep app after that. That caught my attention a lot more, I think, than something that's like, you need to sleep more. You need to, like, sleeping is really good for you. And if you don't sleep, this is what's going to happen, and blah, blah, blah. And that can feel quite like overwhelming in a time when I think we're already all feeling quite overwhelmed. And then just generally back to that point of cynicism and kind of worrying about, can we change things? I think this doesn't mean we can't drive positive change as brands, but I think the tone has shifted and people are expecting a little bit more kind of like lighter, fun engagement from brands, as opposed to adding too much to the heaviness. So in terms of what we do, I think we need to, as marketers, listen to pop culture podcasts more than marketing podcasts. I know we're at a marketing event, but be on YouTube more than you're on LinkedIn. Listen to like what actual real people are saying, rather than just what kind of marketers are talking about. Avoid the echo chamber. Talk to your friends and colleagues about what they watch on YouTube and Shorts. prioritize the views of those that are best informed on that trend or community. Like in your business, find the people that are closest to that demographic as opposed to people, you know, who maybe don't have anything to do with it, and really get the kind of the red tape out of the way to prioritize their views. Creators are your tastemakers, so bring them in earlier in the process and follow the creators that your customers follow, and have a team or agency that reflects subcultures and generations and make sure to ask them about it. And then very quickly in practice, a few kind of creator marketing format predictions that I think we might start to see off the back of this. More suspense-filled, episodic, short-form content. So people might have seen the Who the Fuck Did I Marry series, where a woman basically did a 50-part TikTok series all about her marriage and how he was a pathological liar. Then there was also something called What's in the Rug, where a woman found a rug buried in her backyard and posted about it. And then people were literally tuning in to try and get updates because they thought they'd found a body in the rug. Spoiler, there was no body. But it got about 25 million views, I think, on the peak video. And I think we'll start to see more of that episodic, short form, suspense-filled, like see what's next, catch up later, mystery at the end, cross-pollination of creator content. So find ways you can bring creators together. So for Paris Fashion Week, the brand, the Couples, had these two creators take home after a lunch with the influencers. One of the creators posted about how she had lost her bag, and one of the other creators had taken it, and could her audience, could her community help her find her bag? It obviously blew up. And then the next day, another creator from the lunch said, oh, I accidentally took home her bag, and here's what's in that bag. And then they met up a few days later and did a swap, and it got millions of views. So it's kind of like, how can you find fun ways to bring creators together? Nostalgic 2010 style vlogs and series. I can't remember who said it earlier, but I do think, given all of that, again, like trend fatigue, general fatigue, I think we'll start to see people looking more for like comforting content and things that they used to engage with when they were like in uni or teenagers. And we'll start to see that like kind of nostalgic 2010 style vlogs and series again. More deep dives and niche docu-series. Like people love to get super niche, and, you know, like I think this one on that I've got on screen is a guy who is called Baumgartner Restoration, and it's literally art restoration tutorials and videos, and he gets like millions and millions of views. So people really love getting like niche, and I think that brands can be looking at how you can tap into those super niche communities and niche creators. Then AI that impresses, surprises, or delights, but celebrates the human creative. I don't think that people are against AI, but I think people don't like when they feel it's replacing people. So how can you use AI in your content in a way that celebrates human creativity? This was an example by Elf, where they had a zit sticker and a helicopter flying over Mount Rushmore and sticking the sticker to a kind of zit on George Washington's face. So very funny. Also, unexpected creator influencer partnerships. I think that kind of follows on from the niche interests, but you've had like Marc Jacobs partnering with Tradwife, Nara Smith. You've had Burberry partnering with Cole Palmer. Just finding like unexpected niche creators. Heineken earlier showing us the nail art. I think these really stand out and work really well. Finding inspiration via Reddit and online communities, then using influencer to spread the word. So Michael Cera, the Super Bowl ad that was huge last year was because there was a Reddit conspiracy theory, that Michael Cera was the founder of the skincare brand CeraVe. And instead of kind of denying it, they fed into it, and they created a whole like influencer campaign to drive this conspiracy theory. And then at the Super Bowl, they launched the ad where it revealed him as like a kind of joke founder of the company, and it did really well. Generally, I think people love a conspiracy theory. So if you as a brand can somehow tap into one that's not too harmful, if it's a funny conspiracy theory, people love that kind of stuff. And then customers are your influencers. So actually a Refi example that I loved, instead of sending influencers on a community influencer trip, they sent real life customers to post on their post about the trip as well. And so I think we'll start to see more customers, more employees, especially in YouTube content. So to sum up, remember, no one has all the answers. Obviously, things could change in a second. I don't think anyone could have predicted what happened 5 years ago. But as brands, we kind of need to rely on our curiosity as marketers, listen more, be fast to respond, and kind of presume less about our consumers, and always be thinking about these wider things, because those are really going to help you when it comes to planning your creator content as well.